This is your girl, Sada Star, coming to you with another episode of A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman, the official podcast of the Easy Breezy Life Community. Before I jump into today's topic, if this is your first time joining us, we are a community of women who are faith-filled, focused, and fired up. We believe in a society of women helping women shatter glass ceilings and overcome life's greatest challenges together. Therefore, I'm your big sis, and it's incumbent upon me to inform you that everything we share on this platform is for education and entertainment purposes only, which basically means, sis, if you need a lawyer, get one. If you need a doctor, get one. If you need an accountant, get one. I'm not your lawyer, doctor, accountant. We're here to help, but we are not all of the above. So we want you to go out, get the help that you need, because of course, the Easy Breezy Life is a group project. And I need you to win. So get you a winning team, sis. All right. So this week, I have a very special guest coming on. But before I do, I want to take a moment to answer an intention question, because as we head into the new year, our intentions are so important. I think intentions are even more important than your New Year resolutions, because you got to start with the why behind them. I want to lose weight. Why? Because you want to look cute, because you want to have a hot girl summer. What's your reason? You want to be healthier. Whatever that why is before you go into doing that is going to determine whether or not you stick with that goal, right? So let's answer today's question, which is, what have you witnessed that has strengthened your faith in humanity? Well, for me, a very transformative learning experience was staying at the Ronald McDonald House when my son was hospitalized at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for about 11 months. I have to say that, let me correct that, because he was at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for about 4 or 5 months. And that's the time that I was staying at the Ronald McDonald House, to be specific. Nonetheless, during the time that I stayed there, I was very observant to see how the staff treated the families. I heard so many stories from families who had lost almost everything. So many stories from families who'd been in and out hospitals, very long-term battles with their children's health, And of course, I didn't know at the time that lying ahead of us was our own journey, and that 3 years later, Emmanuel would have made tremendous progress, but also have a lot of need. So during my stay, I just became a student and saw them serving the community with such excellent spirits. And it changed the way that I looked at all that I did. Not to say that I didn't have an excellent spirit going in, but the heart that went into that organization. It was more about getting it right. It was more about touching the people and transforming their hearts and lives and making them smile, because I would wake up every day that says, smile today, help someone. And just for me, every time the holidays come up, I remember that winter. I remember that Christmas. I remember my experiences, and it just shifted. Something shifted in me in a way that there's just no way I can go back to being who I was prior to that experience. So yeah, the way that the Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania takes care of their families and their little ones strengthened my faith in humanity and let me know that there are still organizations purely doing great work for the sake of helping others. And if I am ever opportune to have a similar organization, I would want to emulate the experience and the feeling that I had and the rest and the peace from being in that place. So that is my answer to that question. So we're going to take a brief break, and we will be back with a very special guest, a lifelong friend from elementary school for me. I think you're going to be really excited to hear about who she is and what she does. Stay tuned.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen to? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. I love to use Anchor to reach my strong-willed alpha woman community and help them live healthy, abundant, and successful lives together. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
Welcome back. This is your girl Sada Star. And as I mentioned, season 4 is all about that girl tribe. And joining me today is someone very, very special to me. One of my first friends when I came to this country as a young girl. We have known each other now. Wow, this is a long time. I think we met in 3rd grade, right? And it is my friend Cornelia Dolian. Did I pronounce that right?
Mm-hmm.
That was not her name when we were growing up, but this is your married. So Cornelia is a writer and coach who helps women see themselves, be themselves, and step confidently into the changes they want to make in their own lives and beyond. She is the founder, owner, and sole coach of Cornucopia Coaching. Through her signature change and the AER philosophy, she creates a welcoming and safe space of inquiry where clients tap into their authenticity, empowerment, and resilience. She also offers coaching to those looking to start and sustain action towards social justice, especially racial justice, rooted in those same principles of authenticity, empowerment, and resilience. She enjoys reading, running, and hiking in the mountains of West North Carolina, where she lives with her husband and 2 dogs. Hi, Cornelia.
Hi. So glad to be here. Thank you.
And I am so happy to be able to connect in this way because it has been years since we've seen each other, even been able to have a face-to-face conversation.
Right. And especially now it's like, I feel like we've connected more in this pandemic, and it's just the irony of that.
I know. Life is so interesting. Funny story, everyone. So as you know, as I mentioned, Cornelia was my childhood friend. We went to public schools in Jersey City together. Life went kind of separately. We ended up on Rutgers campus together, but in completely different social circles. And thanks to social media and, being home and not having where to go, we had a chance to reconnect. And I think what's so special about this is all the years go by and we haven't had a chance to talk. And I talk to you and I automatically feel like this is safe. This is good. So it's great. It's great to be able to reconnect. Yeah. Why don't you start by telling our listeners a little bit more about you?
Okay. So as Asada mentioned, so we have been friends since the 3rd grade. And just like you, I am an immigrant. I came here from Romania and I lived briefly in New York, but really my home where I grew up is Jersey City. So I was a really sort of nerdy and awkward and weird kid, had that foreign element and was definitely like bullied a lot, definitely looked at peer pressure. And it's, I found a community of amazing girls around me. Asada was one of them. And that really just kind of sustained me. And, growing up, I kind of grew into my power as a writer and felt into my desire to help people and like be there for people, be empathetic, share myself and give of myself. And a lot of that was rooted in friendship, and a lot of that was, just being the best friend that I could be to the people in my life. And now as a coach, I'm, excited because I'm taking that into a new realm, which is the professional, but it's this sort of deep connection on a professional level. So yeah, I went, like she said, I went to Rutgers. I majored in, religion and English, just because I've always been interested in the things that drive people and root people and make them create art and make them, get through the day. And sometimes that is faith, and sometimes that is literature, or other art, of course. So just always been into that sort of human connection, connectivity stuff. And now
I'm
yeah.
listening.
No, now I feel like I'm just kind of moving into a new phase of that. So I'm excited.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about, I think one of the major themes that jumped out for me in reading your bio was the emphasis on authenticity for your clients. Talk about why you think authenticity is so important in this day and age.
Well, several reasons, right? I think we are really inundated with so many messages from social media, from the larger media too, of who we should be, what we should want, what a good life looks like, what a successful life looks like, what it means to be a woman. And I think that's always been the case, right? There have always been these pressures, but now they're coming from so many different directions, and they're always there. There's not a lot you can do to escape them. If you are participating in social media, if you are participating in just watching TV. And then it's just easy to get lost. It's easy to get into a space where you're disconnected from yourself because you're so busy, or because you're trying to fit this model that somebody else is setting out. And I think there's also, just like always, pressure from like friends or family or business, bosses, whoever there might be, that might be pressuring you to be different or to step out of alignment with really who you want to be. So for me, yeah, it's just about, if you connect with what's important to you and what is true for you, and you live from that space in everything you do, then at least at the end of the day, whatever's going on, you're meeting it as the you that you want to be. Yeah.
So when thinking back to what you were just mentioning about the pressure, and you also mentioned being bullied a lot, and and I totally know what you're talking about, because even being an immigrant myself, the elementary went to, like, I can count the number of times my siblings and I had to fight or were followed home by like groups of kids seemingly taunting us for no reason, right? And other than the fact that you exist. In those moments, having to choose between standing our ground and deciding this is who I am and I will be that, despite who likes it, who doesn't like it, who has something to say about it, or caving in. So I would say that the fact that you're focusing on authenticity and empowerment and resilience probably has something to do with some of those experiences. Can you talk about, a defining moment for you where you had to make a decision of who you were going to be, considering how much peer pressure came at such a young age?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that comes up, and for me, I love Brene Brown. So she talks a lot about authenticity. She talks a lot about belonging versus fitting in. And so for the longest time, I was really concerned with fitting in. Like, if I could just have the right, trapper keeper, or like the right, backpack, or the right shoes, or not do the things that set me apart, from other kids, then I could fit in. I could feel like I belonged.
Right.
You know, I could be one of them. So that's what I wanted for the longest time. And then I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, and I would go home and I would write every single day. Like, that's what I would do. Like, I was working on these really, in retrospect, really bad immature novels that I was writing. And I was just going home and working on them every day. And when I told somebody about that, you know, it was another student, and I have no idea who it is. I don't remember. And he was like, wow, you really have no life. And I was like, meh,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, it was like, I enjoyed that enough, and it was important enough to me
Yep.
that it didn't matter. It was this moment of like, okay, you can think what you want,
Right.
and that's cool. And I guess I don't have a life in your definition of a life, but that's fine, because I have a rich inner life and I'm happy with that. Right. So
that
was a moment, you know.
I think that's such a powerful thing to say, especially peer pressure and thinking of, I couldn't even imagine growing up with that level of peer pressure and social media. Could you imagine?
No, I am so grateful there was no social media when we were growing up.
You never get to reinvent yourself. Like, I have students who have pictures of themselves at age 8 on Facebook, like a profile picture. I'm like, I couldn't do that. You don't get to make mistakes in the same way that you might if it was more discreet. And what you're absolutely right, this pressure between fitting in and belonging. And then, you know, I think I experienced the same thing, but I responded in an adverse way, right? I became a nonconformist and said, I'm not doing this, and had to at some point make a decision like, are you not conforming just for the sake of not conforming now? You know, because you don't want to become the villain in the process of that.
Yeah.
And I would
for sure
say that high school year, I completely rebelled from what people called like, this is what you're supposed to be doing in high school. I was like, no, I'm not interested. Don't want to do any of it. And as a result, you go from people trying to bully you to then trying to say, oh, she thinks she's better than everyone. And you can't win. But what I've come to realize too, as an adult now, is no matter what you do, someone's going to be bothered by it. Somebody's going to think it's too much, too little. Give me more of your attention and time. And back to what we were saying, but when we're getting ready for this about like boundaries, they're constantly tested. Like, you would think it's a boundary and that people wouldn't continually try to push beyond your boundaries, but they will.
They
will.
Yeah.
So it, I really respect what you had to say about, you might think that my personal choices and how I choose to live my life is boring, but for me, it's a rich inner life and it's fulfilling. And that's what's important.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I did realize that too along the way. It's like, you know what? You're never going to make everybody happy. But I think the thing that always sustained me was that I was always able to find people that I connected with, and I think that happened more as I grew, and I appreciated it even more as I grew, because you don't need everybody. You just need the people who are close to your heart and who fill your heart and who fill your life with good things, and for whom hopefully you could do some of that as well. Like, you need those soul connections, those bonds. And it's it's a little trite, but it's like, just worry about the people who really matter, the people who actually already see you and love you. And that's kind of what I started to do. It was still painful when people would make fun of me or would say horribly mean things to me or about me behind my back. That was still painful, but hopefully as I get closer and closer to 40, which we are approaching steadily, I heard that once you get to 40, there's this no F's given
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to more of that.
It's so interesting because and as you know, we're probably really close in age. I'm 37, and my life experiences have made me have to get there sooner. And again, just trying to work on, how do I have tough skin but a soft heart? Because sometimes people say things and I'm like, I really give no F's about that.
Yeah.
Tell you to your face that I give no F's. And the old me would say to people, I don't care about that. And so you as a coach, right? Promote authenticity, being your fullest self, but this idea of having tough skin to stand the pressure, but a soft enough heart to still have an impact.
Ooh, well, it's also something I constantly work on, within myself, because I think there is something to that in the sense that, like, there are situations, right, where it would be so easy to just completely block off, and shut down, almost like have the tough skin, go so deep in that you just shut down, and you close your heart. And I think the way that I see it is, if you are comfortable and happy in your authenticity and you're resilient in that, you can reinforce yourself without having, if you're reinforcing yourself, then maybe sometimes you can pick up a little bit on what might be underneath, what that person who is coming at you in a way that is not okay. You could pick up on something that is within them that's off kilter, or that's like, and I don't mean off kilter as in like they have a problem, but just like maybe they haven't gotten to that place where they're happy with their authentic selves. Maybe they haven't gotten to that place where they could find their power and their strengths in kindness or openness or vulnerability. Maybe they're sad or scared or something, right? And that doesn't mean you allow it, and that doesn't mean you welcome them, to trample your boundaries. But I think just understanding that everyone's journey is different and it's not about you. I think that's one of the biggest.
Wow.
It's like, it's not about you. It's their behavior is about them. If you have actually done something to hurt them or harm them, then yes, reflect on that, figure out if you can make it right. But if they're just mean or rude or whatever, like, it's about them. It's about, and not who they are as a person, like their character. It could just be about their situation, the season they're in their lives, the problems they have. And again, that's not at all to say, yes, allow people to bully you. Definitely do not allow people to bully you or abuse you. You are worth more than that. But at the same time, like, that is their stuff.
Yeah.
Too.
I have a question for you, because what you said there just resonated with me. I feel like in general, in my life approach, I try to keep a pretty open heart, but there have been moments, and this goes to conversations about boundaries, where I have allowed people with stuff to come into my life, and then now their stuff spills over into my life. Find a way to pack that baggage. And I would say that I've gone through a series of, okay, I was connected to perhaps a group or a community of people, and seeing I now must detach myself from this group because I don't like what I've picked up by being in this environment.
Yeah.
How do you process that? Because right now you are, I don't know who your clients are, but girl, I hope the women who are listening in reach out, because these are the things. Like, how do you keep that poison from getting inside?
It's different for every person, right? It's going to be, and that's kind of where the authenticity comes in. There's no one answer that's going to work for you, that's going to work necessarily for me or for the next 10 women that you come across. It's just, it's how, it's what works for you to fortify. And that's kind of why I want to balance the authenticity with the empowerment and the resilience, because the authenticity is going to feed into your power. Like, you're going to find your power in the authenticity. And your truest power is in your authentic self. And then the resilience is the part that really lets you stay authentic and lets you stay empowered when you're meeting challenges, whether they're direct challenges from people or just things like seeping in. So whether that's, prayer or meditation or just losing yourself in something you love, taking a step back, or maybe sometimes it is just reevaluating whether you can be in that community or in that relationship in the fullest way.
Wow.
So,
that is so deep. Like, maybe I got to give you 25% of me, not 100.
Yeah, exactly. Or, and here's the thing, like, you should always be giving yourself 100. And if someone else or something else is keeping you from giving yourself 100, then that's, you got to think about it, I think. And there's always going to be situations, right, that require more from us at different times. And I think if it's hurting you, then you're not even able to be the best you for that community or those people or those relationships. So is there something else you could do? Is there a way you could switch it up that's still participating but not taking it on as much, not letting it seep in as much?
So
I don't know. Is there?
that was it. No, it is. You're so funny. You're like,
Maybe.
oh, you were looking for it? Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
It's some relationships must be surface to keep the poison out.
Maybe.
Right? Like
yeah. Or at some points too,
Yeah, seasons change in everybody's life.
Yeah. And I don't even think that's like something that's necessarily, when you say poison, I don't always think it's like intentional poison, right? Like, so I had a friend, and we were both going through some stuff, and this friend actually ended up detaching from me and saying, hey, in order to take care of my mental health, I'm finding like your anxiety and like this relationship really kind of triggering. And at that point, this person was detaching from a number of people in their lives to take care of themselves and their mental health. And I was like, well, on the one hand, I was really hurt, and I felt, of course, shamed, and I felt like rejected, and like, wow, this is one of my closest friends, like, we shared so much. But then I also had this part of me that was like, but you know what, this is about them, and this is what they needed in this moment, and so I didn't have animosity towards this person. And we did reconnect later on after they had become stronger and found more success in taking care of their mental health and stuff like that. So it wasn't about me, it was about them. It still hurt, and when I was in low points, I was very much like, well, I can't share myself with other people because I'm too much, and when I share myself, they'll just leave, they'll just be like, bye. And everyone who is in my life right now, I'm fooling them somehow. Like I definitely had a lot of those feelings and throughout, but
Wow.
that kind of showed me like it wasn't about them, and I don't think they did a wrong thing. I think they did a very brave thing, to be
Right.
honest. So I think if you say that, if anybody who is listening is just finding that something is harming them, I think it's a brave thing to step back and say, what can I do to lessen this harm? And definitely don't let people abuse you. And if you are being abused, please reach out to, I know SADA has lots of resources. But yeah, I talk about boundaries, and I talk about like allowing people to be who they are and accepting them, and allowing yourself to be who you are and accepting yourself. And I don't want that to ever be conflated with allow abuse or allow, emotional or mental or physical or any kind. And not to shame you if you are in one of those situations at all. But just, if there's any abusers out there listening, I am not condoning the behavior. Go get some help. Everybody just go get some therapy if you can.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think that's a good way to segue. What is the difference between a therapist and a coach? Because, I come from
Mm-hmm.
background. I'm surrounded by a lot of immigrant culture that really a lot of people don't understand the value in seeking professional help. When you tell them to go find a therapist or connect with someone, it's like, I don't have problems like that. Well, actually, first of all, everybody's got something. And secondly, the therapist is meant to be safe because they're going to be confidential and unbiased. That's just my view. They're going to give you unfiltered. It's not going to be filtered from the lens of your culture, religion. They're going to give you unbiased approaches to addressing your issues that are impacting your life and relationships. But how is a therapist different than a coach? And why would I take one over the other?
So that's a really good question, and one I'm still perfecting my answer to. But the short answer is you don't have to take one over the other. I have a therapist. I have been going to a therapist for many years. I've had many therapists over the years when I've moved and stuff like that. Therapy is, first of all, therapists are, licensed. There are strict requirements. They are very well-versed and kind of deeply rooted in psychology a lot of the time. Coaches are as well, and may be. Therapy, I think, deals more with unpacking things like past traumas and healing, whereas coaching is more of a process, forward focused, forward momentum based. Where are you in the present? Where would you like to go? What are the action steps to get you there? There is some unpacking, but coaches, unlike therapists, there's no licensure for coaching. There are definitely programs, and I'm in a program, and there is a governing body, the ICF, International Coaching Federation. So there are certifications and there are like credentials you can get, but in terms of like the government or the state requiring that you be licensed, that isn't true. And most coaches have probably so not every coach is, of course, not every coach is going to be certified. There are people who are coaches and they're wonderful coaches, and they're old school enough that they've just kind of become a coach over the years without having to get any kind of certification, for instance, like when people think of life coaches, they'll probably think of Tony Robbins,
Right.
He's a big one, right? And I don't think he's a certified coach. I haven't looked into it, but and this is not an endorsement of Tony Robbins, and this podcast is not long enough for me to say why, but that's just like one example of people that you might think of as, oh, that's a coach, right? That's one type of coach,
Right.
right? So I feel like that was really long-winded and probably not great. So here's the thing. If you have like depression, if you have anxiety, if you have like a mental health crisis, see a therapist. There are times in my coaching when I've had to tell people, either refer them to, say, hey, listen, I don't think coaching is the thing that's going to be most helpful to you right now, or at least from my perspective, I don't think I can be the most helpful. And this seems like a therapist could be helpful with these issues or
And,
these things.
and how do you know it's like, I can help you achieve this one thing versus there's a breakdown in processing? It's how do you know when it's time to refer?
So we do have like a list of things, but basically, if somebody is extremely past focused, or it becomes obvious that there's like past traumas or things that they have not explored and dealt with, enough to be able to move into a present, sitting and forward focused, kind of resourceful mindset. If they're checking a lot of the boxes that, indicate they are dealing with depression right now, if they're expressing like self-harm or things like that, or and it's not always just therapists. Sometimes they could be telling you about like a physical thing that's coming up. That could be stress related, that could be whatever, and you're like, okay, well, and I usually will be like, okay, well, are you seeing a medical professional about this? Because I'm concerned about you and I want the best for you, and I'm certainly not a chiropractor or a doctor or anybody who can help with this. So yeah, I mean, I think, and therapists are very much more about, at least in my experience, right? It's about unpacking whatever you need and helping you heal. And sometimes therapists can be coaches too. Like sometimes there are therapists who take coaching courses and who do have that as part of their work.
Right. No, that's fantastic.
But yeah. And it's more about, I think coaching is more about action.
Right.
And less about, it's not about feelings and emotions. It's because, listen, those are there and you gotta pay attention to them, because they will throw a fit if you don't, no matter who you are, right? Like that's your inner child, or that's your, you gotta pay attention. Right. But at the same time, it's not as much about those things. It is about, I want to move forward in this direction. I want to move forward toward this thing. And sometimes it's really like, I'm stuck and I want to move forward and I want to change something, but I don't know what, and it can be about, well, what's worked in the past? What are you enjoying now? What do you love? What do you hate? What do we know it's not? Sometimes it's getting in touch with those values, those core values that you have, and seeing what's your next step based on that. It can really be so open-ended. And I'm like a baby coach, right? Like I've only been doing it for a few months. So there's a lot I don't know. And there's
I think going back to what you were saying about becoming certified, I think you play this role informally for yourself and others in your life before you get to this point. So I wouldn't myself short just yet. But I do think what you're saying is important, right? Like we can't ignore our feelings. And sometimes therapy is about processing our feelings and emotions, and coaching is about taking actions and taking steps to move past maybe feelings that we have resolved in some way and may not.
Yes.
So there's one thing to feel like I'm worthless and I don't, know what I'm doing with my life. Is another thing to be like, no, I know that I'm worthy. I just need someone to help me get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When I do with helping women in business, it's coaching them to say, okay, you got all these lovely ideas. I need them narrowed down into 3 ways that you are helping people and how we can monetize those. Like it's clear. I'm not going to talk to you about probably your relationship with your loved one and your spouse and all those things, because that's not what I do. But when it comes to this particular focus of your life, I can support you in that way. So I totally get what you're saying. It's just complex and you don't always know what people need until you start having a conversation with them.
Yeah. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because like what I study is whole person coaching. And so we're taught to look at all those things, right? Like we're taught to understand that like they're coming to you for they might be coming to you for marketing coaching, but sometimes you're going to have to take a little detour and talk about the fight they had with like their business partner. And that's a relationship thing, right? Or their partner at home or their kid or whatever. So absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I think that is exactly right. You put it beautifully. It is about, once you have healed enough and want to move forward, and confidence for me is a big thing that I like to coach around. And if like if I were still in a place where I was some years ago, where my confidence was super low and I thought, man, I'll never be anything better, and really still struggling with those like limiting beliefs from childhood and those traumas, really, because it's the limiting beliefs are rooted in the traumas.
Ooh.
Right. And so once you've healed the traumas, then you can think about and you can work on the limiting beliefs. And that's something that you can do in coaching. But if you're still raw, you need to process that with, a professional who's trained in that.
Ooh, that was great. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Cornelia, do you want to let the audience or the listeners know how they can get in contact with you?
Yes. So I am on Instagram as at Cornucopia Coaching. Sorry, at cornucopia.coaching. And my website is cornucopia-coaching.com. And that is it. That is how you can get in contact with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cornelia.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you welcoming me to your beautiful podcast.
Oh, and I'm sure the listeners learned so much today, and it was great to reconnect with you, and much of what you said resonated so deeply with where I am in my life. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.